labor migrations refers to the systematic movement of skilled and unskilled workers from one region to another, offering their services on temporary, seasonal, permanent basis for a pay. It is the movement of the active labor force from their place of origin, it could be their community, the state or country, to another, for the sole purpose of employment. This employment could be formal or informal employment. Nigeria had experienced a symbiotic labor relationship with almost all the countries of the world today, basically as a result of the general dissatisfaction with the prevailing social and economic conditions in the country, coupled with high unemployment rates, which has increased migration from Nigeria, especially among young, active, educated persons. Traditionally, it used to be a male affair, but increasingly it has become females have joined the trend in search of opportunities outside the country. Nigeria has lost great minds to labor migration. At the same time, spent great, of course, amount in hiring foreigners in the name of expatriates. Presently, Nigeria has no formal structure that supports labor migration to other countries for the purpose of employment. People are left to decide and make personal and private arrangements to migrate so as to escape economic hardship. These most times are done in very risky and unrisky traveling conditions, and on arrival often can only secure low-paying menial jobs. This is because migrants are poorly informed or misinformed about the conditions of entry, work, skills required, and their rights and obligations in the destination countries. On the other hand, Nigeria is also a destination for migrants. Available figures showed that the number of immigrants residing in Nigeria has doubled in recent past, or in the recent decades, from a little above 477,000 number of immigrants residing in Nigeria in just 1991 to about 971,000 in 2005. This data is yet to be updated by relevant agencies in Nigeria today. And these immigrants are coming from economic countries of our neighboring economic countries, West African countries. Immigrants in Nigeria figure prominently in categories such as general manager, corporate manager, which stands about 0.89%, technical engineering professional, which stands about 0.43%, less in semi or non-skilled workers like the clerical, clerks, and manual work, which stands about 0.21%. Most immigrants working in professional or the technical-related jobs are from the neighboring African countries. Nigeria traditionally is a safe destination for migrants in West African region, but there are more people emigrating from Nigeria and that are immigrating into Nigeria. The International Organization for Migration, that is IMO, estimated that about 7.6 million African migrants are living in Europe. In addition to this estimate, the Migration Policy Institute also estimated that between 7 to 8 million illegal immigrants from Africa lives in Europe. It is also estimated that the population of African migrants to the United States is about 2.1 million. The United Development, that's the UNDP, in 2007 also observed that the majority of African migrants who live in Europe come from the most developed sections of their own society. This suggests that these are the people that are educated or enlightened group in their society. This movement of trained or educated personnel, that's the skilled laborers from Africa, Nigeria inclusive, to other countries for better opportunities, is known as labor flight or human capital flight, commonly referred to as brain drain. This refers to the immigration of educated personnel or skilled people from one country to another. Brain drain is not novel in academic discussions like this, since very often references are made to this phenomena in discussing manpower problems faced by developing countries. From this background, we will all agree that brain drain in one country is brain gain in another. Then the question now is, what is human capital flight? Human capital flight simply is the loss of skilled intellectual and technical labor having moved to geographical or economic entities or professional environment that is favorable to them. Skilled labor migration is the migration of individuals with professional, technical skills. This is due to lack of opportunities. It could be economic opportunities, social opportunities, political instability, and etc. Most skilled labor migrants amount to economic cost since immigrants usually take away with them the value of their training and education sponsored by their government and states of their origin, and even the organization NOUN can testify to this. We now know why United Nations defines skilled labor migration as one-way movement of highly skilled people from developing countries to the underdeveloped country that only benefits the industrialized country. A 2010 report by the Migration Policy, a Washington, D.C. think has also reported that in the late 70s, or about the late 70s, that about 30,000 Nigerians, by the mid-1980s, about 10,000 Nigerians were in the United States. Many of them are highly skilled, and this number is still on the increase to date. Brain drain has its reverse effect on Nigeria, and at the same time, had opened routes for these immigrant relatives to leave Nigeria as well. Nigeria has a history, that is the trajectory of labor migration in Nigeria. Nigeria has a history of large-scale migration. This work has actually identified 5 different migration patterns, and one of them, or the first in all, is the Hausa transnational through trans-Saharan trade routes on pilgrimage to Mecca. The second one is the transatlantic slave trade. Here, labor migration dates back to the era of slave trade between the 1400 and 1900, where over 12 million slaves were exported from West Central and West African countries, Nigeria inclusive, to European colonies and America. Nigeria during this period of slavery lost about 2 million forced labor migrants. The third was the colonial era. Migration at this time mostly was internal, in search of better wages and living conditions during the colonial period. The British in the 19th century aided extensive intra-regional labor migration. The arrival of the British came with export-oriented political economy policy, which completely changed the face of migration in Nigeria. Viable resources or viable resource areas like the cocoa, cola nuts, and rubber in the southern part of Nigeria, nuts and granules and teas from the northern part of Nigeria were channeled to support and sustain the colonial policy. The resultant effect is the need for labor to sustain the production of these resources. This led to rural, urban, and rural migration of labor to these farms as migrant tenant workers from where they are working as migrant workers, farm laborers, miners, and migrant traders. This also attracted laborers from West African countries such as Mali, Niger, and etc. The fourth was the inter-regional migration. That is the post-colonial or the post-independent period of migration. This was reinforced mainly by the ethnic solidarities of communities separated by borders and the movement of African countries that have booming economies. This area saw Nigerian relative stable, prosperous, and economy attracted by a number of intra-regional labor migrants within, as well as migrants from other West African countries. These labor migrants were attracted to destinations of mining and cash crop production, regional administrative cities of Kaduna, Ibadan, and Enugu, and major commercial centers and seaports of Port Harcourt, Lagos, Calabar, and Abuja, and Warri, among others, offer a variety of employment opportunities. The fifth pattern of migration that has been identified here is the modern era. That is the era we are in now. This era saw the migration of Nigerian professionals to other countries of the world, such as the United Kingdom, Italy, United States, and etc. This duly as a result of cutback on the economy. In the 1980s, labor migration here is calibrated along the forces of globalization, which was transforming the world economies. The deteriorating socioeconomic conditions of the early 1980s, the macroeconomic adjustment measures of the late 1980s and the early 90s, and the huge increase in the number of entrants into the labor market of the late 1990s to date had fueled the job crisis situation and, of course, sustained the pressure of migration. Globalization, infrastructure, and the death of distance has become very manifest as a result of information and communication technology in this area. Information on employment opportunities and the location can be obtained in seconds. Consequently, inter and intra-regional labor migration are facilitated via various forms. More recently, the Nigerian to Canada route has witnessed migrant labor traffic known as the Ottawa doing and Abuja undoing. Whereas the political economic situation in Nigeria has not really improved, many migrants have been drawn to the twist on the favorable migrant rules in Canada. The Canadian government in 2015 implemented a new system for taking in skilled immigrants using a point-based calculation system in which applicants are scored on the basis of their age, education skills, work experience, and even their language skills. This is aimed at prioritizing those who are most skilled and ease their entry into the country, and at the same time encourage skilled migrants to settle in less populated parts of Canada. The Immigration Minister, Ahmed Hussein, who himself is an immigrant from Somalia in 1993, announced in 2018 that the country wants to attract more than 1 million people from 2019 to 2021, simply an equivalent of the 3% of its general population. Australia and New Zealand use similar approach. The British Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, after his electoral victory, said he wants to implement same. Then the next thing we will be looking at is the types of labor migration. On a general note, we have two different types of migration. That is the voluntary migration and the involuntary migration. But as it has to do with labor, we have the skilled professional labor migration and the unskilled or unskilled labor or non-professional labor migration. Embedded in these two is the legal, the illegal, and the forced migrants. Then we will look at causes of labor migration. A cursory look at the neoclassical theory of migrants sees labor migrants as rational actors who simply move from societies where labor is abundant and wage is low to where labor is scarce and wage is high. Now, this simply explains the social relationship between man and migration. Now, for you to understand the social action, it is important for you to understand the interpretation given to it by the actor. And in this sense, the rationale behind migration now has to do with the wage. Nigeria is among the top 10 in terms of labor skilled migration admitted into Canada in the past 10 years. If you look at the table there, you find out that Nigeria, that is in 2017, Nigeria is seated on the 8th position with about 5,459 persons admitted into Canada. And just a little after 2 years, in 2019, you find out that Nigeria had actually risen to the envious position of the 4th with about 12,595 persons that had been admitted into Canada. The North American country has long become a haven for immigrants around the world because of its economic opportunities, strong social safety, and high acceptance of diverse population. Many studies on international migration have also confirmed that the economic factor is the common denominator and plays a dominant role in people's decision to migrate across borders, especially when it has to do with labor. Though in some instances, issues that has to do with kakotopia, antitopia, dystopia, sexual orientations, large family sizes, uneven distribution of resources or development are also reasons for migration. Effects of migration. Labor migration affects both the sending and receiving countries in diverse ways or forms. Thus, they are economic factors or economic effects, cultural, demographic, political, and social and psychological life of people, both at the place of immigration as well as migration. And then we'll look at the economic factors. The prime objective of labor migration is for economic gain. One of such is remittances, which migrants sends home to their families. Available data according to PEU Research Center of the World Bank show that in 2017 alone, Nigeria recorded about 22 billion naira in terms of remittances that flowed into the country. Hence, migration of a family member is used as a means of income for the family. Of course, both skilled and unskilled migrant workers make remittances to their countries of origin. Cultural and social impact. When people migrate, they tend to adjust their habits, include changes in religion, clothing, sexual habits, and even interaction with families and friends. Then we'll go down to look at the demographic impact. Migration has significant influence on the population of both the receiving and sending regions. An increase in the migration of a particular age group is expected to affect the population and the growth of the sending and the receiving countries. Political impact. Good governance is becoming a concern of many governments. Of course, in absence of popular democracy, you have political security and the rule of law. People may feel insecure and thus the need to migrate to other political environments or consciousness that might be better in relative terms. Political factors such as prevalence of election rigging, armed robbery, and conflict among ethnic groups, of course, are all factors to be considered. Then labor migration in perspectives. Nigeria, with untapped investment opportunities lying in all sectors of the economy, like agriculture, mining, technology, and energy, is a labor receiving, transit, and sending country. The adverse effect of the global economic crisis has added pressure on the active youth of the country to migrate, added to the fact that the economy is unable to gainfully accommodate them. As a result, many of these youth fell prey to traffickers, smugglers. Migration, which ordinarily should be a choice, has snowballed into a necessity. Most labor migrants undertake blind and undocumented migration to unfamiliar and unknown destinations. Most times go through perilous and unsafe routes, thereby putting their lives at risk to get to their destination. In response, receiving and destination countries have screwed up security and stringent visa requirements. Nigerian youths are still willing to migrate. Desperate migrants now seek illegal routes to enter these countries. At this point, the need for effective manning of the process of labor migration has become more necessary because Nigerian migrant workers are in this angle, especially women who are vulnerable to violations of their fundamental and human rights. This brings forward the urgent need to check extensive stigmatization, embarrassment, racial and socioeconomic exploitation that Nigerian labor workers are exposed to. The negative image of Nigeria among the Committee of Nations and the tension generated between Nigeria and host communities resulting to xenophobic attacks on Nigeria, especially those countries where a large number of irregular migrants and unskilled migrants, Nigerian migrant workers reside, calls for attention. Equally of importance is the necessity for organizing labor migration in such a way that it is beneficial to migrants as well as to both the origin and destination countries to ensure labor migration achieves its aim to both human and countries' development. Coordination of recruitment agency. Nigeria do not have a total control of the recruitment agencies in the country, both the public and the private owned. Our situation is such that humbugs parades as recruiters. Well, sometimes admittedly, in 2006, the Ministry of Labor and Productivity invoked the provision of the Nigerian Labour Act to commence the registration of private recruitment agencies in Nigeria. This actually is in line with the ILO Convention of the Private Employment Agencies Convention. The essence was to make sure that private recruitment agencies and their principals are liable to workers' violation of human rights. This lack of coordination has actually resulted to ethical issues where charlatans practice and indulge in unethical practices where recruitment agencies are, of course, recruitment agencies are meant to be registered, licensed, and operate under human capital providers, of course, under a supervisory body or a ministry. In conclusion, labor migration is part of human existence, a phenomenon that will continue to be in practice across societies and cannot be stopped, of course, but can better be managed to contribute to development. In Nigeria, active youths are caught or have caught the migration fever that mostly favor Western countries. An entire economic system has emerged to help applicants navigate migration rules. Off and online marketplaces are stocked with used household furniture and cars being sold by young people who intend to migrate. In terms of emotional support, friends and families, social media groups are saturated with relocation tips and prayers for those applying for labor migration visas. All of this reached to a height in 2019 when a news website claimed that the Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, has asked his Nigerian counterpart to send about 1 million Nigerians to Canada. This story, which was actually false, we can just check it from the side there, actually went viral. The Nigerian government itself appeared unperturbed and undisturbed by this outbound migration trend of its professionals. The Labour Minister told journalists last year that the country was exporting its best mind because it had a surplus of talent. And in any case, when they go abroad, they earn money and send back home. All this had justified the main push factor as unemployment. in the face of all the abuses and exploitation. But it will interest us to know that most taxi drivers and others involved in many jobs in these countries are likely immigrant engineers and doctors, and even educated Africans. Recruitment agencies have, through their actions and activities, handled labor migrants as vulnerable persons to be exploited and treated inhumanly. Exorbitant fees and charges are collected from potential migrants after feeding them with deceptions and false promises that fuel their desperations to migrate. The case of Nigeria is pathetic. Young talents that is supposed to replace those who are emigrating is in steady decline. And the impact is apparently, of course, we are seeing it today. The country's educational institutions grown under weight of strikes and underpaid staff protesting poor funding and advocating and underpaid infrastructure. Medical procedures are either not in existence or regularly delayed because of shortage of specialists. The lesson we have learned the hard way during this COVID-19 pandemic. In all of this, coordination and regulation of labor recruitment agencies under the personal, of course, labor migration are done under personal and private arrangement. Thus, protection against scam and false agencies need to be addressed. This will ensure recruitment agencies do not exploit the ignorance and vulnerability of potential labor migrants. In my recommendation, at present, Nigeria has no formal structure that aids labor migrants to other countries. People travel under personal and private connections or arrangements to escape economic hardship. Apart from risky and unsafe traveling conditions, labor migrants are often poorly informed or misinformed about the conditions of entry, the residence, skills required, as well as their rights and obligations in the destination country. The result is exploitative labor force, and women are lured into commercial sex, work, and other vices. Then the next thing needs to be done, or what needs to be done, is the question now, which borders on the establishment of labor migration or immigration department, or a migrant resource center that will be saddled with the clear-cut responsibility to first do what? Gather and manage data or information of Nigerian labor migrants or immigrants. The next is the provision of necessary information to migrant workers, especially as it has to do with receiving countries or destination countries. Now, protection of Nigerian labor workers wherever they may be domiciled, and the patriotic need to protect the image of the country. The next is pre-departure counseling, orientation, and training, as this will help prepare migrant workers to enter the labor market and be integrated into the new society they are going into. And then integration of migrants and reintegration of returned migrants, there is need for a migrant resource center. Then the next thing that needs to be done is to quickly implement and adopt existing labor migration policies like the one I mentioned in 2006. The government should make conscientious effort in the implementation and adoption of existing labor policies that will reflect current realities. This will help effectively in managing labor migration to achieve development to the benefit of the country and that of humanity in general. Thus, promotion and protection of skilled and unskilled migrant workers, protection of rights and welfare of Nigerian migrant workers, and harnessing the benefits of both the skilled and unskilled migrant workers in terms of remittances, brain drain, brain circulation, and social and technology transfers into and out of the country. Thank you for listening. God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nancy Shukuma. We appreciate you for a brilliant presentation. Today we have participants from different parts of the world, and I will honor this person from University of Ibadan, who is a friend of National Open University of Nigeria. He is a Professor Tajuddin Akonji. He has answered the clarion call from me to kindly let me know if you're going to ask a question or you have a comment. Professor Tajuddin Akonji is the director of the Institute for Peace and Strategic Studies, University of Ibadan. Professor Akonji, you have the floor. Your comments or your questions?
Yeah. Yes, thank you so much. It was highly innovating lecture. I just want us to look at the issue in Nigeria about the difference between labor migration and the issue of brain drain. I was part of a team that visited Germany some years back on an official program, which is a German visitors program. And a question was asked at the Foreign Affairs Office of Germany. The impression that Nigerians had about Germany, especially in the process of Nigerians moving to Germany to work and coming back and repatriating money home. One of those things I told them that time is that we send our best brains who we have trained in Nigeria here to go over there. They have left because of governance problems, our inability to provide jobs for them over here. Now we send them to those places and then they engage them in manual work. Whereas we send engineers there who now go to the streets and start to sweep the ground. And who now go to hospitals and start to wash the nappies of sick people. So one of the advantages that we should have had from labor migration, that is our getting some skills from all those other places and coming back to apply them here. We are not actually getting them because the reason for migration in this part of the country is not because we have excess labor force, but because of governance problem, whereby our government is unable to provide employment for those they have trained. There was a year that 85% of doctors trained in UCH left this country. They did not go because they needed just to migrate, just because there are no jobs for them in this place. So we should try to explore the issue of the role of governance in the problem and the subject matter of labor migration, so that we do not confuse labor migration with the issue of brain drain. Thank you. That's just my comment.
Thank you very much, Professor Akonji. And we will look forward to you presenting a paper on that and sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you.
The next person that has indicated to me is the Vice Chancellor, Professor Abdallah Adamu. Actually, I was going to call him, of course, but he has indicated that he would like to speak now. The Vice Chancellor, sir. I think he's having technical issue, I believe. The VC, sir, is having technical issue. Do I have anyone that would like to, while we are waiting on the VC, let me quickly say this, that Dr. Nancy, maybe in reviewing your paper for peer review for the, I believe the occasional paper series that we are planning, and it will give you more information as we have it shortly.
Yes, sir.
It may not be today, and I plead for your indulgence about that. Let me say that in your attempt to historicize labor migration in Africa in particular, you should look into the Bantu migration that predates the Hausa, and the other ethnic groups in that region crossing over the Sahara. Indeed, the Bantu migration predates all of this. That was before the desertification of the Sahara. But also more importantly is the fact that you have to look into the Indian Ocean. Most times we forgot that before the transatlantic slave trade, Africans were shipped. They were shipped through the Indian Ocean to India, to Japan, to China. But what happened in that region is the fact that you have a massive castration of our people. I know that the VC is back now. Massive castration. So Dr. Nancy, you may want to look at that Indian Ocean migration that predates the trans-Saharan, the transatlantic migration. And I'll pause, I'll allow the VC to speak. The Vice Chancellor, sir.
Thank you very much. I would like to welcome everyone I don't like to appear too visible in these kind of things because this is not my show. It's not my gig. It's somebody else's show. It's somebody else's gig. Mine is just to be a participant and if possible to say one or two things. So this is not a policy thing that the vice chancellor has to talk. I'm not a vice chancellor here. I'm Abdullah Adamu. I'm just like anybody else. You know, I don't have any special privileges more than anybody else. Just an ordinary participant. I think the presentation was very good as usual, but there are quite a few issues, and part of these issues are conceptual. I would have loved if she had particularly given us a POV, a point of view of the migrants in other places. We have heard a lot of stories about how migrants, African migrants, particularly Nigerian migrants, are actually rejected when they get to the borders and things like that. I have traveled extensively and I have suffered racism. Not because I'm a bad guy. I'm a professor, but they don't care. Those border guys don't care wherever you are, as far as they are concerned. The moment they see a Nigerian passport, you're a bad guy. So sometimes when I go abroad, outside Nigeria, I don't even say I'm a Nigerian. I say I'm from Niger Republic or from Mali or from somewhere else. I avoid my Nigerian identity because most of the Nigerians who migrate, I didn't say all, there are a lot of professionals who work in hospitals. I know quite a few who are working in London as doctors and they don't have any issues. But most of the Nigerians who walk out, who migrate out, they do so out of economic hardship. And when they get over there, instead of just focusing attention on doing whatever they are doing, they just simply get into bad things. Also, they get into menial labor, like in UAE, when you see black people washing cars, washing streets, they are likely to be Nigerians. When you hear about armed robbery in Dubai, it is definitely done by Nigerians. And what they do is, I have a daughter right now who has migrated to UAE into a state called Ras Al Khaimah. And she said that whenever there is a robbery, they don't go out. They stay at home. The reason is because when the police go out, they arrest any black person they see. So the only way you can escape is to go out with your passport and show them that you know you are a Somalian or you are something. So that way they will not harass you. So I think I agree with the professor from Ibadan that a lot of the migration is to do with the economic hardships in the country, and we're no longer exporting our best people. Those that are best, when they get over there, they disappear within the professional cadre of those countries, so that we don't really see that they don't see them as migrants, and they don't even consider themselves migrants. You have Nigerian, American, Nigerian, British, Nigerian, Canadian, and so on. You have all these hyphenated identities that they keep coming up with. But there are cases where Nigerians have more or less integrated themselves in the mainstream society. She probably erred in her data by saying Hausa migrate to Mecca. They don't. Hausa go to Mecca and then they come back. When they are in Mecca, they don't come back. They are considered illegal immigrants. I've been to Mecca twice and I have seen Nigerians, particularly Hausa, and I know that they hide themselves in the rooftops, in the ceilings when Hajj is over. They are hidden because the moment they are seen, they are arrested. I have seen them being arrested and being placed in cages like animals. And I don't see how anybody can subject himself to that kind of humiliation just simply because he wants to make money. So this issue of lack of dignity on the part of many of the migrants who live. And as the professor said, you have somebody, we know in the 70s, when many of our university professors go to London, they don't really go to the University of London or any other university in the UK to work. They go to London to sweep streets, and they prepare to be sent to Oxford Street. I was a student in London in the 1980s, and you see black people sweeping streets, and when you talk to them, you discover that they are actually professors from Nigeria. Why do they like Oxford Street? Because Oxford Street is like Alabama Market or somewhere, you know, where you have a lot of people going there. And these people lose money, I mean, out of their pockets, they lose coins and things like that. And that is what the Nigerians pick up. So you see a Nigerian professor going to London, sweeping streets, picking up coins from the streets, and then he'll always tell people that I've gone to London. And one of the things that they do is to try to get married to a British woman so that they can have children there, so that every year they go back. Most of us here have children that are there, so that at the end of the day, we will use those children as a basis for migrating to that place. So the Hausa migrants in Mecca are not really migrants, but they're unskilled labor, people who are there and who are scared, who are living in mountains and villages. The only time they come down from mountains and villages is during Hajj. This is because the Arabs feel too arrogant to wash cars. They cannot load vehicles. They cannot carry vehicles, carry load to vehicles and things like that. They can load and download luggage. And therefore, the only people who could do that are the black people, and the Hausa are very happy to do that. I would have loved if she had focused specifically on some countries. Like, for instance, there's a book by Abu Manga called The Hausa in Sudan. And he dealt with the issue of migration and integration. These are two concepts that are very, very critical. How to migrate and how to integrate. The Igbo have migrated from the east to Kanu, but they have not integrated. They still remain enclaved within a particular society. So what actually is migration? Do we just, is it hardware or software? By hardware of migration, I mean human beings move from one place to another looking for jobs. By software of migration, I mean people who move to another place and integrate with that community so that they are part of that community. But when you migrate from your society to another society and you keep to your society, to your people, I'm not sure whether that is really migration. You are just displacing yourself from one place to another. You go there and you eat amala, you eat eba, you eat all the kind of food that you eat in Nigeria, but outside it is snowing, and you take photographs to show that you are outside the country. Is that migration? So I think that this particular conceptual issue. The same thing with the Turks. People from Turkey were taken from Turkey to Germany, particularly Hamburg. They built Hamburg with the understanding that they will be given citizenship. At the end of the building, they were asked to go back because by then the government has changed, and they refused. But the problem that the German government is facing with the Turks is that they refuse to integrate with the German society. You see, if you go to Germany, any German city, Frankfurt, Berlin, Hamburg, you will still see people, you will still see Turkish women with their hijab. And the Germans are saying, no, 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 you have to integrate. But so the question for the migrant is, do I give up my culture and my identity in order to adopt a new country? If you want to keep your culture and your identity, then the idea is that you stay home. But so long as you're in another country, then you have to give up that culture and identity. That is why I would recommend to Nancy Abu Manga's book, which I don't have electronic copy, so don't ask me for electronic copy. Abu Manga's book, published by Rudger Koope in Germany, called The Hausa in Sudan. That gives you a framework for how people migrate and how they integrate. There are also Hausa in Morocco, and they formed a community called Gnawa. Gnawa means Kanawa, that is people from Kano. When they migrated to North Africa, they changed the accent and they became more or less like Arabs. So they are called Gnawa, and they form a genre of music, which is called Gnawa music. So we have that. So it's not just to Mecca that the Hausa migrate. The Hausa have also migrated to Ghana, where they form a large part of the population in Zango, in an area in Ghana called Zango. They live there. And when you go to the crafts market in Ghana, a lot of the crafts that are sold in the market, if you go behind the market, I've been there many times, if you go behind the market, you find that it is the Hausa people who are doing it. Hausa have also migrated to Cameroon. There is a vibrant community in Cameroon of Hausa people. I'm talking about areas where Hausa are non-existent. Niger is different because 54% of the languages spoken in Niger is Hausa. Okay, they have about 7 languages, but the largest and the majority is Hausa. So they are not migrants. The Hausa and Niger were actually the same country until the 1885 or 1888 Berlin Conference, which divided Nigeria and Nigeria. So I think there is a need for her to have a conceptual framework of what is willful migration and what is labor migration, what is brain drain. Slave trade cannot be seen as migration because it is not a willful migration. It's a forced migration, which she said so. It's a forced migration. And the slaves are more or less identified with their host communities. African Americans now are just like as American as anybody in terms of their accent, in terms of their dressing, in terms of their food. But if you go to some of the migrant communities now in Europe where Nigerians are, you still see amala, you see yam, you see so-called African shops. And in these African shops, that is where they sell things that are African. Why would I want to buy something African when I'm in California? I lived in California for some time and I have never been to any African store. I don't want to buy amala, I don't want to buy fufu, I don't want to buy rice or anything. I want to eat what the Americans are eating. I want to understand the culture. I want to be part of that culture. I don't want to create a small, tight little community where only my people are there. We go there and then we only speak our language. We don't integrate. So it is a very, very big issue for migration, to migrate or to integrate, to get out of the poverty of the country or go there and find a beautiful woman and marry her. For those who are interested in migration, I can competently tell you that the Polish are looking for Black people, particularly Polish women. I taught in Poland, and the first thing that I was told is to indicate that I'm married. Now they are Catholic, very good Catholics. The moment they know that you are married, you are off limits, they leave you alone. But once they know that you're not married, then the next thing you know, you start getting all sorts of invitations for lunches and dinners from absolutely gorgeous, beautiful girls because they want to marry a Nigerian. I don't know why. They even do online marriage with Nigerians. But the fact is that a lot of Nigerians outside the country do give Nigeria a very, very, very bad name. So I think we need to look at the conceptual difference between skilled migration of doctors, engineers, pharmacists, computer people, and economic migration. If you are, let's say, 24 years old, and you have a degree in computer science, and you want to visit somebody in the United States, I can guarantee you the US Embassy will not give you a visa because they know that if you go, you won't come back. That is how it is. US Embassy will not give you a visa because they know that when you go, you are not going to come back. You are highly skilled. So that means that her perception of the desire of other countries to absorb people has a lot of problems. So I would have loved to see some kind of empirical data that indicates actual studies that have been conducted about perceptions of this. Finally, so that other people can also talk, I would like to see the point of view of the migrants. I'm a migrant, for instance, in Berlin or in Hamburg or in Brussels or in Switzerland. What do I feel about my society? There has to be a work that looks at migrant voices. What are their voices? What are their feelings? How do they feel as migrants in this particular community? Do they feel like they are like Europeans or something? Because these are the same people who come back home for a holiday and they change their accent. Somebody goes to America and stays there for about 6, 7, 8 months or 2 years. And when he comes back to Nigeria, he's suddenly American. Oh yeah, you know, the kind of stuff that we would like to do in this place is, you know, and I don't understand. I mean, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. They change their accent, they change their everything. So we would like to know, what do these migrants feel when they go over there? What do they insist on the herd, community, tribal thing where they have to keep themselves together so that they maintain their so-called African identity, or do they integrate? Because communities are formed as a result of people becoming one. Do they share the same values as the mainstream hosts of the societies that they are in? So Ghanaians, for instance, Ghanaians also integrate effectively in Europe and they transmit money. Nigerians don't transmit money. When Nigerians transmit money, they keep the money outside there, or they build mansions. And a lot of the money that they transmit is based on illegal trade, drugs, armed robbery and things like that. But Ghanaians, I have seen Ghanaians in Germany. They live an orderly life, but they are still Ghanaians, and they keep telling you they are not German, they are Ghanaian. So what does that mean really? What does migration really mean? Does that mean that my village now moves from one place to another? Or does that mean my mind moves from one place to another? Or does that mean that my mindset moves from one place to another? These are the kind of issues that we need to do. We need to know what kind of job do they do. I have seen most of the blacks that I have seen outside Nigeria are menial laborers. They do menial labor and so on and so forth. And so these are the kind of the few questions that I have. But I agree with the professor from Ibadan. Professor from Ibadan, Institute of Peace and something like that. But we do have a headquarters for the Institute of Peace here in National Open University of Nigeria. And
Yes.
soon we'll ask you to close that down, because that one is just one time.
He is actually. Thank you very much.
We have one. We have built one here in Abuja. We're just about to open it when this lockdown thing came in. When we asked Bogoro to come and open it. So once more, thank you very much, Nancy, for that spirited discussion. But I think you need to improve it. You have given us, you have whetted our appetite. So you need to really look deeper at other aspects of migration from other points of view. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Abdallah, Vice Chancellor. Now, we cannot overemphasize the need for a conceptual framework. And for me to piggyback on the VC's comment, I will advise the presenter to look into at least 1, 2, 3, or 4, among which are the idea of this double consciousness by Lisa Lindsay, or the triadic relationship, also kind of be at variance with some of the comments by the Vice Chancellor. If you study those concepts, you can, based on evidence, that is your fieldwork, validate or invalidate, and that is what scholarship is about. It is also imperative that you take a look at what we call the ACT method. That will tell you a little bit more about those that went legitimately, for instance, on scholarship or on fellowship, and choose to come back or choose not to come back for some of the reasons mentioned by the Vice Chancellor. I will ask Professor Emeritus Godwin Sogolo to speak. He's been raising his hand, and whoever would like to speak before our time is up, kindly chat me and so that I can call you. Thank you very much, Professor Sogolo.
Thank you, Chairman. I think one of the problems you face when you ask the Vice Chancellor to speak before many other people is that he tends to go around all the points that we want to make. And
yes.
He has gone through all the points that I put down. Now I'm finding it difficult to make fresh points. But the main point I really want to make is that the discipline of migration studies is a science, or call it social science. And as such, when presentations are made in this kind of platform on behalf of the center, I want to see more of academic research. Let the presenter show that he has, like Professor Abdallah was saying, he in this country, he talked to this, he observed this, and so forth. That is the way science is done, the way social science is done. But even when lots of research, we do so much of this speculation like we are having, but I'm not seeing much of the empirical research, by the presenters. I'm talking generally since we started these presentations, and I believe that for our presenters to be more scholarly, to talk with greater authority, they must refer to some of the research work that they have done, refer to figures, refer to interviews, and so forth. So that's the general point that I want to make. The other points have been taken over by the vice chancellor. So you try to call him last so that he talks for a long time and he talks to all the points that we have, as if he was taking the point from my mind.
Thank you very much, Professor Sogolo. Actually, I was going by the fact that you raise your hand or you chat me and I will call you. And he actually noted that he is not here as a VC, but as a co-participant. I think on our part, we will limit comments or questions to maybe 3-5 minutes. And then with that, we can take care of some of your notes. Let me call on Dr. Oberry. Dr. Oberry.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you. I just want to make a clarification. Well, I thank Nancy for that presentation, but in telling us the patterns of migration, she listed about 5, which included the Hausa movement, the slave trade, the colonial, and thereabouts. And the impression I got from that is that those are also forms of brain drain. And my question is, though as she actually pointed out, those people moved with their skill, but can we regard those ones also as the concept of brain drain in the contemporary sense? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I will allow Dr. Nancy at this point to respond to the comments and questions. And you have the floor, Dr. Nancy Chukuma.
Thank you very much, sir. I want to start by appreciating the Vice Chancellor and the guest.
Please speak to the mic and also let's see your face. You're hiding yourself.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. I want to appreciate our Vice Chancellor for his contributions and the areas that he has pointed for me to look at as I go on with this work. And then our guest, Professor Tajuddin Akanji, that is seated in the house. Thank you very much, sir. The issue of the trajectory of migration. Of course, if you look at the trajectory of migration from the first generation to the modern era, you find out that all of them had in them elements or traces of brain drain. Though the concept of brain drain, like had been pointed out here, is not all of them are all skilled, but from the beginning to the end, you have that brain drain. It exists in all the areas. Now, if you look at the second, the third, and the fourth, you find out that there are people who had actually migrated out of Nigeria, and they left. Now, I think the understanding you have there is that brain drain are all, or they are just people who had been trained here in terms of formal education. But then there are still informal educational systems that have trained people, and yet they will still leave the country with those ideas or training that they had acquired. For an instance, like the Vice Chancellor has pointed out, within the ECOWAS countries, there are people that have migrated out of Nigeria within this period you're talking about, like in Sierra Leone. There are people whose forefathers had actually migrated then, and they're in Sierra Leone today, and they're all doing well. People like the former president of Sierra Leone, who is actually an Igbo man, Christopher Okoroquel, in 1977 is one of the presidents in Sierra Leone. And then most recently in 1992, the army chief of the Sierra Leonean government is also an Igbo man whose father had actually migrated. I think the name is Captain Kano or so. And so all of them are all brain drained, as it were, but not in the sense of formal education, but it could be informal education or informal training that had actually acquired. The underlying factor or the denominator in all of them is that these people are living with the training they had acquired from here to all these other things. Thank you very much, Ma.
Thank you very much. I do not see any hands up. As we close, we want to thank you for joining us. And we appreciate you spending time to contribute to this intellectual discourse. trying to mute so many people that okay. So we look forward to another interesting meeting next week, Monday.
Can I say a word or two?
Let me also state that Professor Akonji is actually one of the founding members of SPSP, and he's also one of the first fellow of that association. And he has always supported the move to Abuja, particularly to NOUN, that the Vice Chancellor mentioned. I thank all of you very much.
Before
Please
you
be
close,
safe.
can I say a word or two, please?
Okay, please, sir.
Yes, today is the election day for those who are to represent Senate and congregation on the search team for a new Vice Chancellor. So I'm just reminding us, because I keep getting campaign promise, campaign leaflets and campaign email. Everything is done online. So I'm just reminding those who are members of the university community who are properly registered to go and vote. I'm not registered because I'm not a staff of the university, so I'm not voting. It is only when we reach a deadlock that I cast my vote. So I'm not part of the voting system. But those of you who are part of the voting system, please go right ahead and do it. And then Nuga Oban Nikini, I beg, next time let's see your face, not your cap. Why did you disappear? Let's see your face, not your cap. Because all I'm seeing now is your cap, not your face. Thank you very much, and have a good day, everyone.
Thank you very much, sir. And so I thank you so much. Be safe, and bye-bye.